Hello, in this video we're going to be talking about everything you should know or think about if you're thinking of changing jobs or changing careers. So that's the topic of the presentation for today. And I've been invited to give this talk by my colleague Dr. Amy Imms from the Burnout Project. Amy specialises as a doctor in coaching other people, including doctors, but not just doctors, other professionals and people in other careers who might be experiencing burnout in their job or career. And Amy every year puts together this really great Thrive Symposium, and I'm participating once again in this symposium, so this is the first bit of it. I'm speaking and providing you a quick talk as a prelude to the weekend, and on the weekend I'm going to be doing a workshop for those of you who are interested in getting into the details, the nitty-gritty about what you need to do if you're thinking about changing careers. Things like, how to look at your CV and review that, how to kind of reposition yourself, how to think about interviews, etc., etc. So we'll go into the details in that workshop. But today's talk is about what you need to know about career changes. So I'm excited to be participating in this symposium once again. So we're going to talk about changing jobs, everything that you need to know. Now, a little bit about me. Some of you may know me from the Career Doctor YouTube channel and my blog Advanced Med. I am Dr. Anthony Llewellyn. I'm the Managing Director of Advanced Med. I run a medical HR coaching and consultancy business. So I've undertaken a few career changes over the years. My background initially as a doctor was to train as a psychiatrist. I became a consultant psychiatrist. I then moved into the area of medical management. I worked in a kind of a director of medical services type position, and then I went into some executive roles in various health organisations, moved in teaching and academia for a while, and then finally set up my own business. So it is possible to change careers, and in my business, yes, I mainly focus on helping other doctors with job applications and preparing for job interviews and career coaching, that sort of stuff, but I do work with other organisations around things like recruitment and selection, including working with non-doctors, both on the coaching side as well as the business side. For example, about to embark on a little project working with a local surveying firm around some of their issues from an HR perspective. So this talk is not just for doctors, it's for other professionals or people in other trades or careers who might be thinking about changing it up. So what are we going to cover today is the reasons, firstly, why you might want to switch jobs or careers, because I think it's important to think about what might be the various reasons, and that may affect your approach. But then secondly, I think if you are thinking about switching your job or career, you do want to think about internal options. Does your job really have to stay the way that it is staying at the moment? Is there something you can do internally to change things around? Then we'll talk about how you might go about identifying a new career, and then once you have identified a new career, what the process might look like in terms of transitioning yourself, repositioning yourself, and what you can do in the meantime while you're waiting to take up a new job. And finally, I think we want to talk about changing career can be painful. You're maybe moving away from pain, but there's going to be some pain along the way inevitably for you. So we need to acknowledge that there are some not so good points about changing a career or a job, and how you can manage some of these pain points through the process. Okay, so what we're going to cover in this talk is reasons why you might want to switch jobs or careers. What might be some of the reasons, because that kind of goes to the process and some other things you should think, particularly around internal options, which is next. Does your job really have to stay the way it is? Are there things that you can do within your job, either to stay in it permanently, to give yourself more fulfillment, or at least to buy the time while you're transitioning to another career? Then how do you go about identifying a new career for yourself? What things can you use to do? And finally, the process, transitioning, how to reposition yourself, and what to do in the meantime while you're waiting to change careers. And then at the end, I want to cover just some of the not so good aspects for career changes, reasons why you might want to reconsider, but also things that you need to be aware of, because it's not a painless journey, generally, moving from one job to another. So that's what we want to attempt to cover in the next 10 minutes or so. So, reasons why you might want to change your career. Well, firstly, boredom. Maybe your job no longer gives you the thrill it used to do. And that's important to consider, because maybe there's some things you can do to alleviate that boredom. Maybe your values have changed, or maybe the values of the organisation you've worked for you feel have changed. It's hard to work in a job where you don't feel like you're providing the sort of value that you want to provide from that job. Maybe the focus is different. Maybe you find that the job takes too much away from other things that are important in your life. Maybe it's a job that requires you to do a lot of extra hours, and that deprives you from the time you want to spend with your young family or your sporting hobby or other hobbies or that sort of thing. Maybe it's just not helping you to set the right priorities in your life. Maybe your passion now lies elsewhere. And you can see how a lot of these concepts sort of overlink and overlap. And you want to invest more time in that passion and you feel like the job's getting in the way. Maybe you're just deeply unhappy, and this is where we get into the concept of moral injury, which is about that thing where you feel like your values are not being met through the job, but you see bad stuff on a daily basis that makes you feel bad about turning up to work. And then finally, it might be a remuneration thing. Maybe the money's not enough. And I think that's a particularly tricky one to deal with. I work with doctors, and often doctors want to change careers, and often when they're changing a career, they're going from a big salary to a not so big salary. So it's important to kind of consider, is it about the remuneration, or is there another way you can set up the expectations financially for your life so that the work you do you feel is valuable and you're not chasing that dollar, I guess. As I said, it could be these 6 reasons, could be another reason. You might want to comment below in the video about other reasons that have led you to want to change your career, and it could be a mixture of any of these. The first question I would want to put to you is this: can your job change? Are there some internal opportunities to make things different that can address whatever the reason or reasons it is that you're thinking you need to undertake a career change? So here are some thoughts about internal opportunities. Maybe you can do a secondment away from your job to another area in the organisation you're working for, the business that you're working for, to do something new, exciting, something you wanted to do, something that kind of brings back your passion. Maybe there's some projects within the job that are waiting for people to put their hands up for that could give you some time away from the regular work that again gives you some sort of sense of fulfillment, re-engages you in the work. Maybe there are some training opportunities that you could be putting your hand up for, which would take you away from the regular daily work, but also give you more skills and ability to perhaps put your hand up to change the nature of your job, to take on more responsibility, to move it in a different way. Maybe you can discuss some of these issues at your performance review if you have one of those processes in your business where you talk about things and ambitions and things that you'd like to do over the next 6 months or 12 months, whatever the cycle might be. Maybe it's possible to cut down hours. Maybe you can pursue some other things on the side, but also that relieves some of the pressure. For example, if we're talking about the job taking your focus away, cutting down some hours might give you the amount of time that you want to contribute to other things that makes you re-engage with the work. Or maybe you've got lots of leave owing, or you can afford to take some unpaid leave, take a bit of a break from the job. Probably the last one is probably not going to solve your problem though. It might bring you back refreshed for a while, but if the job doesn't change and you've got problems with it already, it's not likely to change while you're away. But you can see there are certain things that you want to think about before you jump ship. And you want to fully explore these internal options, because even if you do decide to move after you do that, it's going to make it easier for you if you do need to leave. For example, additional training gives you additional skills and perhaps qualifications. Cutting down might give you a smooth transition to the new career. So think about those internal opportunities as either a way of making the job feel worthwhile again, or a transition into the new career. So let's talk about changing to a new career. In his book, Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life, Hector Garcia, many of you would probably have seen this little Venn diagram-y type thing that sort of shows how you can explore the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for to come up with this Ikigai concept. Now, I have to say that I understand that this is very much taking license from the actual Ikigai concept in Japan, and there is no Ikigai Venn diagram in the Japanese concept of Ikigai. But it's a useful exercise to sort of think through, to sort of come up with what you want to do in your life. But I don't think everyone's going to hit the middle of Ikigai necessarily in their career, but if you can be addressing as many of these things as possible, then that's one way of sort of identifying where you want to move in terms of your passion. So maybe, using my example of medicine, and I'm going to use the example of a client that I coached once in the past who was making a bit of a decision between, does she want to keep working in medicine or does she want to go into real estate because she really enjoyed flipping houses and was good at it? What did she love about medicine? She loved the engagement, the talking to people, the seeing successes in patients. She worked, I think, in a general practice setting, but she also liked meeting people in the real estate business and helping people to purchase houses and fixing up things. So that was what she was good at and what she was passionate at. And real estate is a profession, and the world needs housing, and you can definitely get paid if you're good for it. So that was kind of her transition, but it wasn't as if the skills that she had in medicine were completely different from the skills that she needed in real estate. Now, she'd obviously gone off and done some training, because you can't just sell houses without a license and all that sort of thing, but she wasn't just going from one career blindly into another. So How can we identify a new career? Well, the first thing I think you should do is review your current career first. What are you good at? What problems can you solve, do you like to solve? What do you like in work? What aspects of the job do you still like or used to like? Are you a people person? Do you like solving complex problems? Do you like working in big teams? Do you prefer working on your own, etc., etc.? And then your network. So I'm going to come back to networking quite a few times. Do you know someone similar who's left your business or organization? And if so, where did they go? Who picked them up? What skills were they able to transfer to something else? And then these are a number of things that you can do to sort of have a look at what new career might be worthwhile for you. There are bunches of tests out there that you can take that sort of give you an indication in terms of your personality preferences and other behavioral indicators, what sort of careers you might want to pursue. With all these concepts, it's probably worth engaging either a career coach, or in some fields you can engage a recruiter to help you sort of make some of the decisions and interpret some of these things like careers tests. Review your qualifications. What careers are your qualifications used in? For example, you might have done a teaching certificate part of your current job. Now, that might have been to teach within the medical profession, but if it's a general teaching certificate or certificate in assessment, I think it's called, you can use that in a lot of other areas, that qualification. Do your research. What occupations appeal to you? Find out more about them. What industries and companies are you interested in? Find out more about them. And do that particularly by speaking to the people in the jobs that appeal to you. Okay? And then, as I said today, you might want to, might be a time where you want to engage with a coach. And again, networking in person and things like LinkedIn can be quite valuable. You can get lots of insights out of something like LinkedIn. Now let's talk about generalizability and being pegged. And this is a big issue for many doctors that I work with. You, on your level, may struggle to see that your skills are more generalizable to other areas, but also others may struggle to see past your current professional job in terms of being able to do other jobs because you're kind of being labelled, in my case, as a doctor. And that can be a real issue. Partly the only way to move past that is some self-exploration, but also persistence and trying to add additional things to your resume to make it clear that you aren't just a lawyer, or aren't just an accountant, or aren't just a doctor, or aren't just a bus driver, or aren't just a hairdresser, whatever your current occupation is. So transitioning, do what you can whilst you can still do that in your old job. Take advantage of your current job if you're able to. Take advantage of training or projects that are available. Do your research while you're still working. Upskill at work. Volunteer if you've got spare time in the areas that you're thinking about. If possible, do some freelancing or consulting on the side if that's allowed. And this all leads back into, you may want to cut back your hours to be able to do some of this extracurricular stuff leading you into a new career. And that may then make you pause and think, well, I need to cut back on expenses. And that probably is not a bad thing, because you may get lucky, but in most cases when you're transitioning from one job to another, you're starting at a rung lower. Even if you're setting up, your own job, there's going to be a lot of expenses, and you're not going to be able to, setting up your own job as part of your own business, you're going to be not going to be able to charge probably at the rate that you're used to being paid for. So it's going to create a bit of a financial impact on you. So cutting back on your remuneration by virtue of cutting back your hours is probably not necessarily a bad thing. It gives you a little bit of scope if that's something you can afford to do. But I would say one thing: if you're starting to sort of have one foot outside of your job and one foot in it, you need to be careful that you're still doing your job well and performing well, and that your managers are happy with your performance. If it's come to a point where you're really not engaged, you're just turning up, that's not so good. You need to be able to rely on your current employer to say that you are a good worker from a reference point of view and perspective. You definitely don't want a bad feeling when you leave that business or organisation coming behind you when you're applying for new jobs. So you do need to still put in the effort in your current job. Otherwise, probably it is the point where you should be thinking about packing it in. So let's talk now about repositioning and overhauling your approach. So obviously things like your CV or resume will need to be done over again. The way you prepare for interviews is going to be challenging because you're probably used to applying for jobs within your occupation or profession and talking about the skills within your occupation or profession. Now you want to be able to talk about transferable skills, but not, again, get typecast as a lawyer or a doctor or a hairdresser or a bus driver or whatever it might be. So you need to have other stories to tell as well that show that you've got lots of skills matching the needs of the job that you're interviewing for. And of course, you may not be applying for jobs, you might be just going out there to create your own job. And that's okay, and that gives you a lot of freedom and scope, but it's also can be daunting. It's the ultimate way of career changing in more ways than one, because you have to prove yourself to the universe that what you're doing is worthy of remuneration in some way. So we talked about there being some not so good aspects to changing jobs, and we do have to manage our expectations. I think the key thing here is a pay cut is likely. Money is not going to be as good moving from one job to another job, particularly initially as you reclimb the ladder in terms of seniority. And that often surprises people when I talk to them about this issue. For example, I'm involved in a few doctors groups, and often in those groups doctors will come along saying, I'm feeling burnout in my emergency medicine job, I'd like to move to a outside of medicine or a non-clinical job, what can I do? And then it's but paid at the same level. Well, I'm sorry, you're very good at what you do and you're being paid for doing that. You have to prove that you've got the skills to be remunerated at the same level in another area, and you may not necessarily have those skills straight away. So no one, or very few people, will actually care initially about your successes in other areas. You have to re-establish that credibility. Again, even if you're developing your own job, going out on your own and setting up your own business. And so it's important to be humble and to be open to learning from others, even people more junior to you in terms of age, but actually more mature and senior to you in terms of their knowledge and understanding of the career that you're wanting to embark upon. Finally, what should you not do when changing careers? Well, a few things. Don't do things quickly. Don't resign abruptly. Don't do no research about the other options that are available to you. Don't quit out of stress or in an emotional moment. Get some coaching, get some counseling if needed, if things are becoming really bad for you, and do it in a clear head and a rational way. And definitely do not burn bridges. The way out the door, tell them what you really think about their job or their industry or their business. That is going to harm you and backfire on you down the track when you apply for other jobs. And as I said, I think this is a perfect opportunity or time in your life to think about engaging with a career coach, someone who's got some experience in this area that can help you out, a mentor or a wise person along the way to help you in this process. So that is everything you need to know about changing a career or job. If you want to get in contact with me, there are my details. There's a QR code for you as well. I will, of course, be appearing on the weekend on the Saturday. We'll go into a lot more detail about preparing for a career change, from CV to interview, with all the other things in between. And if you're watching this on YouTube and enjoying this video, please subscribe and turn on notifications, and I will see you in another video. Bye for now.